it's good to stay alive, right? You don't want to die. So in the case of Colorado, you can fart and start a forest fire. So I roll over, I look like a walrus trying to hump off a rock. And I'm not exactly a set of car keys. I'm a pretty big dude. Because that thing leaked like the Iraqi Navy. The flint and steel, if you're going to be Jeremiah Johnson and start a fire with a flint and steel, I highly suggest you practice said task in multiple environments, starting with your backyard and some gasoline, because that ain't easy. My wife included, before we met, she got lost a couple times, and she can get lost in a phone booth. And I've done some pretty dumb things. I mean, I'm not going to church it up.
We strongly suggested that they call it the Gritty Film Tour. They opted for the Full Draw Film Tour, so...
Everybody makes mistakes.
Breakfast of champions, Snickers, and Diet Dr. Pepper. Come on, get a piece of it!
Why, yes, Brian. It is true.
That sounds terrible.
The days of our lives.
Hello, alright, you're listening to the Gritty Bowman, home of gritty bow hunting films, interviews, tall tales, and a wee bit of manly boasting.
I'm South Cox, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Hey, this is Corey Jacobson, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
We born and raised outdoors, and you've been listening to The Gritty Bowman.
There you go.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Jordan.
And you're watching
The Gritty Bowman.
If you like the show, please go to our website at grittybowman.com and subscribe to this podcast and tell your mates and pals about us. Do us a favour and please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes or on our YouTube channel. Send your questions and podcast ideas to grittybowman@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can see the video version of this podcast on our website at www.grittybowman.com.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. We are back. Aaron Snyder is here, and we are going to talk about ethical shot distance.
Yep.
But today we're really going to talk about it because
no squirrels.
Yeah. That's the goal. So with that said, we're going to dive right into it with no tangents and nothing else because it'll get away from us again. So Aaron, share with us some of your thoughts on ethical shot distances.
Well, first, I guess I would say is this is a very highly debated anywhere you go, whether you're on a public archery range or on a forum or anywhere at a camp around the fire, whatever.
It's kind of like politics and religion.
Mm-hmm. I better spit my gum out. My speech teacher would have a heart attack. He said anytime you're doing public speaking, you never have gum. And I've seen it go to violent debates, like, and I've had guys, because I shoot long distance at the archery range, extreme long distance, or what I would consider extreme. And one thing I would say is one man's extreme could be another man's average shot, or one man's, average shot, another man's like, holy cow, I'll never shoot that distance. And that's a rifle and archery. Right. Now, I'm not a big rifle guy, but I have multiple friends that shoot extreme long distance, what I would consider extreme. And just to kind of get the base of all of this, for example, to me with a rifle, 400 yards is a poke, right? It's a ways.
Yeah.
But you talk to a guy like Ryan Avery, John Pinch, Sean Carlock, Sam Millard, some of the guys I know, I'm like, hey, what gun should I get for shooting long distance? And they're like, how far? I'm like, I don't know, 400 to 600 yards. And they're like, whatever you want. I'm like, anything. They're like John Pinch or Ryan, their heart rate doesn't really skip a beat until, it's not a challenge till they're at 12 plus, 1,000 plus yards. And I've seen them all take animals at extreme long range.
Yeah.
And when I say extreme, Ryan shot his moose at 1786.
Holy moly.
One shot, one kill. Pinch, he shot that goat at 1168. And his deal with the goat was inside of 50 or over 1,000. Like anything in the middle is not worth doing. Farther than 50, 60 with the bow, didn't want to do it. Closer than 1,000 with a gun, no challenge at all. Now, keep in mind, Brian and I are mid-road on this. So anything I say, I don't send any hatred messages. I'm trying to look at this from a non-biased perspective from all parties. So the first thing you have to look at the first thing that comes up, archery or rifle, but archery specifically, as animals can stake a step. A lot of things that can happen between 0 and 80 yards, which is true. Yeah. Very true. I shot at a whitetail once, and he smoked a cigarette and had a sandwich, and I still missed him by a couple feet, and it was going right for him. I mean, depending on what we were shooting.
I have a story for you.
Lay it on me.
Okay. There's going to be some people who don't like this story.
It happens.
But this is the honest truth. I had friends there to witness it. I was taking a 75-yard shot, which I had been drilling 75 yards for 6 months, just nailing this target out to like 85. Felt really confident, really good groups. This is with broadheads, the whole deal. So I'm out there in Oregon, and I set this new rule. Okay, so whenever I shoot long distance, the animal can't know I'm there, because I've had them staring at me, and it's like they see that arrow coming. Okay, and so they just got to be, and then they got to be in a state where they're not moving. They're really stationary, comfortable.
Right.
So then
we'll touch on that later.
So then the animal doesn't move when I shoot, right? And then it stays put. So by the time my arrow gets there, it hits the right spot. Because I've taken some 45-yard shots on some elk and the year before, and this bull was looking right at me. I just cow called, and it was staring me down. And it took me too long to kind of get the pen settled in to set my release. And as he was staring at me, he started getting more and more nervous as I was trying to get the shot settled in. And then when I shot, he just ducked really low, and the arrow hit high, and didn't hit anything important. It bounced right out, hit some kind of bone. So this bull, I was like, I'm never doing that again. When they got me pegged like that, and I'm shooting longer distances, I'm not gonna. So I come across this mule deer inside this slot canyon, super super narrow slot canyon. And it's super quiet. There's like no wind, no nothing rustling in there. But I don't really notice that. I just noticed this buck. I range him. He's 72 yards. And he's just standing there on the hillside, calm as can be, eating some scrub brush. And he's not moving. He's completely broadside. And there's no way to really stalk in a lot closer because the brush is like neck deep up the hill. But he's wide open on this slope. Range him, 72. I draw back. I'm really comfortable with this shot. It feels really good. I'm settling. I release, and it sounded like somebody yelled, "Whoa!" as loud as they could. I mean, like, that canyon was dead silent, like no sound. And when I released that arrow, it just echoed, like, it was so loud. And that deer just did this. It just crouched down, did this roach back, kind of, and just lunged forward. And I shot his tail off.
That's probably not funny, but that's ace and tail.
It shot his tail right off. Like, as he crouched low and sprung forward, that arrow went right where he was at, cut it off right at the base, docked it clean off. And so my arrow and the tail are sitting there next to each other. And when he jumped forward, that arrow, it got there too late.
Well, almost too late.
All right.
But you did get that much of the deer to take home, right? Yeah.
See, what a pretty tail.
You nicked it off perfect.
Yeah. So basically, I shot his tail off.
Yep.
He crouched down, lunged forward, and whack.
Lost his tail. And off he went. And this was right by the arrow.
What'd you get, Brian?
Till November anyway, huh?
I got a wee tail. That's all I got.
So sad.
We'll have our...
Poor buck.
I know, eh?
At least I didn't
You might have a rough life, man, with
Trying to
no
sucker.
bunghole protection.
Oh, I know. The flies will be bothering him. Next season, we'll get him then.
He has a bit of a nub left.
He's got a bit of a nub left.
You think?
I don't know. I went through the bone.
Cut
Yeah,
bone, right?
It cut bone, man.
Sliced it right off.
Those
I got up
razor
there to get
blades
my
are
arrow,
tight,
and there's a
man.
tail laying on the ground. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
We all started laughing.
I
We
saw
pulled
that.
it.
I saw him roach back and then lunge, like his
Yeah.
body just, and he just sunk and whoom, shot forward. I mean, he just jumped, and my bow's not
How do you do that
loud.
in a second?
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
1,000.
So he's like 5-6 inches too short. He was on his lunge.
Remember that video of that blacktail you shot?
Oh yeah,
That thing when you shot,
and it was 26 yards.
yeah, that thing drops to the ground. Dad's arrow goes right through the kill zone, right over its back.
Well, it's like that at the film tour, eh? When they showed that one with the elk, where it dropped, and the guy was shooting from about the same distance. He was shooting
I
at
think
like
it was
70 yards.
75 or 80 yards. Yeah, that was
70 yards.
pure elevation.
Right, and he
And he
showed the
just-
thing in slow motion. That big, huge elk just
Drops.
drops.
Right as
And
the
they
arrow's
put
about
two
to
lines up,
impact.
and they show you how far it drops, and the arrow goes zoop right just over its back. It would have hit in the vitals, and it dropped just before it bounced off, and that's what that deer did do. Except you got a bit of it to keep. They didn't.
I think I'm gonna mount it.
I think you should. I'm telling. That's what
Put
I
it on
said.
a- put it
Put
on
a
a
plaque, a little wooden plaque like this. Have it sticking off the wall. Next year we'll come back and get the rest of it.
And I go down there, and I still have the tail, so I went back to. I was just sick about it. Went back to camp, and I was like, can they really? I mean, in that range, how much time does it take? Well, we timed it. We counted it off. So when I released my shot to the time it impacted the target, it was basically a second.
Second, yeah.
So it went 1/1000, bam. You know, as soon as I release 1/1000, smack. Well, in that second 1/1000, it seems short, but a deer can move. You can
5
completely,
feet.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was a big eye opener for me. Yeah, a deer could move 5 feet in a matter of 1 second.
Yeah.
So
And one of the most important things, and I kind of bracketed this out. I made a few notes. You need to know animal behavior, right? So, and without getting myself bashed too much, because I got bashed several years ago on Archery Talk about the Head and Shoulders with rocks, about bench leg. You know where I'm from originally, and I was hunting. It's a blacktail mule deer area where they breed, and I had hunted 9 days, I guess. And I can say where this area is because it sucks now because the DOW are idiots. But it's on the Pacific Crest Trail area. Used to be when I was a kid, right? I mean, I'm old, whatever. I'm getting old. I'm almost 40. So when I was a kid, that was the place to go because you could get tons of rifle tags for in there for the high buck hunt. Anyway, and I was in there for 9 days, and on the 9th day, there was a deer bedded, and I didn't. This was quite a while ago, where, 280 was a fast bow, but I've always shot heavy arrows, so my bow was deadly silent. I was shooting a 25-14 fixed blades, heavy arrow at 80 pounds out of a PSE Mach 10. So that's, I think it was Mach 10, 2003 maybe.
okay.
So I shoot this deer, and it's the only deer I saw the entire time. And I got to 80 yards, and I shot it, right? It was bedded facing away. The wind was blowing down, and I kind of stayed on top of the ridgeline, and I just waited for the wind to be at an angle enough, I felt, where I could get above it, and then I approached. And there wasn't a whole lot between he and I, some rocks. I mean, if he would have looked back, he would have busted me. So here's where the argument comes into play. For the ethics police and non-long distance shooters, a good hunter would scoot closer. And even some of my friends, Justin Davis, he practices far away. I've never seen him take a far shot, and he kills lots of animals. He would tell you, I'm a crappy hunter and I should scoot closer. I would say I got to 80 yards and I'm a good shot and I want to go and fill my tag. So then the ethics police will tell you you should be able to walk home without an unfilled tag rather than shooting long distance, right? It's it's not worth it. And bow hunting is about getting close.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, for me, I just like the adventure of the hunt, and I don't put a lot of stock in close or far. I feel just like in life, you have to go to bed at night, each individual person, and you have to deal with what decisions you made throughout the course of a day, whether it's robbing someone blind or taking a shot at 80 yards. You have to go to bed at night. I felt comfortable with the shot. I knew the deer wasn't there. I knew if I got to 40 and that deer saw me, I would still, because I guess I'm an unethical guy, still probably try and shoot it. So my decision was 86 yards, I think is what it was. It was 80 with the cut downhill, or 78, whatever it was. I would rather all the time in the world to execute a perfect shot at a deer that's basically dumb, right? He's sleeping, than push the issue and get closer, because I know if the deer saw me and stood up, I would probably, you're hunting, right? You can say whatever you want. I've seen the most ethical people in the world that have given me crap, and I've hunted with them. And when the rubber meets the road, I have found most people aren't as ethical as they are on the internet. That's my own opinion. But I took the shot, smoked it in the boiler room, and a few years later, and my buddy had filmed it. A few years later, a guy was getting bashed pretty hard for shooting long distance. And I just hopped on there and I said, hey, if you're capable and I'm not saying it's for everyone, but here's a story. And I told that story and I said, I feel I made the right decision, but 10 other guys could have been put in that position, and 9 of them may have been out of their ability, right?
Right. Not unlike a guy who shoots 400 yards versus a guy who shoots 1,700 yards.
Right. And
not everybody is equal, dude, in their skill level.
That's my point. Now, there's a big difference.
Wait a second. Finish your story. So you posted it, and what happened?
I got bashed to death. I mean, no one on a forum hardly ever is going to post, it's okay to shoot long distance, even though I can name off some of the greatest archers in the world. They all shoot animals long range. Not all of them, but 90% plus. They're going to reach out there and poke it. And thank God, Tim Gillingham got on there and defended me and said, hey, guys, I shot an elk at 88 yards, and I'll do it every year. And it's up to each individual person and ability. Now, there's a big difference between what is right and wrong and what someone is capable of. Meaning, if someone is capable, I would not want John Pinch shooting at me at 2,000 yards. I definitely would never want him shooting me at 1,000 to 1,400, nor Ryan Avery, nor Carlock, or Sam Millard, or some of these other guys. But I guarantee I know a lot of guys that would criticize them to the end of days that can't hit shit at 300. I mean, it's like, yeah, fling away. Blast me at 300. You can't shoot for crap. So, but then there's the, ability and everything else. Throw that out the window. Guys will say, it's just wrong. You just shouldn't do it. No matter what your ability is, it's not hunting. And I understand the argument that it's a different type of hunting. There's a lot more math involved, and obviously you're dope, and a lot more skill as far as reading the wind. It's not easy shooting long distance, but you're relying more on equipment. It's not holdover. Obviously, you're using ballistic turrets, and by no means am I advocating either one. I have just seen what a rifle and a trained man hands is capable of. I've seen what it can do.
Yeah.
And I've seen what a rifle can do in a chuckle puppet's hands at 400 yards or 300 yards, and what it can do. Same thing can be said for a bow. Now, I've been at the local archery range here, the outdoor range, the Bear Creek Lake, right? We all go over there and shoot. And on more than one occasion, I have had a Reinhardt 18-1 at 120 yards, dropping bombs over and over, no backstop, laying arrows in, a group like this, fairly frequently. Without people getting on here and saying film it, I'll film it to prove it. It's not a big deal. But shooting an 18-1 between 1 and 120. And I look to the right, and there's guys at 20 to 40, and they're looking for arrows every time. Like, I have plenty of time to go to 120, pull my arrows out, go back, throw in a dip, drink some water, make a phone call, and they're still looking for their arrows because they missed the target frequently between 20 and 40.
Yeah.
And those guys have come down to me and said, hey, will you shoot an animal at that distance? And I usually like, well, it's always good to be able to take a follow-up shot if needed at that distance. Plus, shooting farther does make it easier when you shoot closer. It seems like a chip shot. And then give me the rant about I should never shoot an animal that far. Now, putting things into perspective, not talking about just holding your mud and what happens when an animal can move, and taking all of that aside, if I ask that guy and I said, what's your effective killing distance? And he says 40, and he can't hit a bale that's 4 feet wide and 4 feet tall. And then somebody asked me and I say 120, and I am, or let's say 100 yards.
Yeah.
And I keep it in a paper plate. Well, who's wrong? It's just numbers, right? If you go off of groups, the guy at 40 yards is wrong because he's missing a whole bale. Well, then mathematically,
Yep.
you get into that number. The animal can do more at 100. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If that guy's shooting a smoking 180 to 220 feet per second, and I'm shooting 280 to 300, and I have a heavy arrow, which, whatever, carries a bit better anyway, technically, our arrows might be getting there at the same time if you run the math.
I never considered that.
Well, I've been in this argument a lot, so I've considered all of those things. And so my point.
So basically, you're saying like a traditional bow at 35 yards
and mine
may
at
arrive at the target at the same time as yours does at 80.
80 to 100, depending. And before, because I've had some traditional guys give me crap because I said, I can't remember what I said, but I said something.
So basically, though, that same amount of time is available for the 35-yard traditional shot as it does your 80-yard shot. Same amount of time. The animal has the same amount of time available to move in the time you release to the impact.
Exactly.
Huh.
So, and you can run the numbers if you want.
You're a smart guy.
Well, if you've been criticized enough for long-distance shooting, and I have shot, like this year I shot my elk relatively close, and I shot the bear relatively close, and I would not get bashed of any of the last several animals I've shot for the last couple of years for long-distance shooting. Now, I did make a mistake, and it was on film, and I got bashed about the head and shoulders because I shot a mule deer coming out of its bed, and I missed it, and it ran out a ways, and I didn't range it, and I reloaded, and I smoked it right in the heart, and it was a far shot. So not only did I get beat up about the shooting a moving animal, I got beat up about the far shot too. And I think that the way that I look at it is I missed one of the largest elk it is the largest elk I've ever shot at. It was standing out in a big grassy opening, 86 yards, feeding. No idea in the world I was there. My buddy called it into 26 yards. There was a lot of other elk around during all of this. And when that elk came in, I was at full draw, and it's moving, coming down, and I certainly didn't want to shoot it running or galloping. And so I just stayed on it. And when it got to a certain point, I thought I would cow call and shoot it, obviously. Well, there's a tree that I ended up, running into as I'm coming down. And so I had to step back around the tree. And the elk saw me and just stopped, muscled up. He knows I'm there. 26 yards. I didn't know how far it was. I put my 30-yard pin on its lungs, and I shot. It ducked all the way down, came back up. The knock of my arrow on the way up broke off, hitting his back, and the arrow toppled. We're talking, this is a big bull for me, 370 plus bull. One of the only bulls I've ever seen come close to 60-inch main beams is 58 probably. And my buddy, he's never seen me miss. I smoked a marmot at like 85 yards earlier that day off a rock. So he's like, yes. I'm like, dude, I freaking missed. And he was like, you don't miss. I'm like, yes, I do miss. I just missed. I know I missed. And he's like, dude, I saw your arrow flipping. And I'm like, dude, it was so fast. It came back up, and then it ran up the hill, and just to rub some salt in the wound, it bugled several times at us. My buddy called every elk out of that group. It was early season, back to us, but the one.
Yeah.
So I didn't hit it. The moral of the story is I should have just stuck that thing to the ground at 86 yards and not even blinked an eye. You know, and you know, when I'm 60, I may have completely different views than I do now. We all base our views on our own personal, well, some people base it off of what they hear, but most people with common sense base it off their own personal history. What has happened to them?
Their collective experiences.
Yes, exactly. My collective experience says my abilities to hold my crap together, hold my mud, and compared to is good, right? I don't do anything too stupid too long. Knowing the animal behavior tells me generally shooting an animal for me from 60 to 80 yards that has no idea I'm there, that's not moving, is a much higher percentage chance of me killing it to that area between 30 and 45 of it knowing I'm there. Mm-hmm. Even at 20, I mean, I've seen whitetails. I missed a coos deer once at 26 yards, and that thing could have done 6 360s by the time. Those coos deer are fast. I mean, super fast.
Like
and the one I ended up killed being a farther shot. So my point with that is am I doing something wrong with a high level of ability to shoot at 70 to 85? Am I doing something wrong there? Or is really where I went wrong of taking a shot of an animal that knew I was there and had way more of a chance to move at 26? Well, what I thought was 30. So I was a little hot anyway. The same thing, you know, that it's a little bit different with the long distance rifle shooting, because the chances of the animal moving at those distances, because it is so far away, are really slim. I mean, you have a lot of time generally if you're doing it right to take the shot, and once you start to see animals get shot at you know, whatever, 1,000 plus, those animals don't move. They don't even look. They just keep feeding. They don't know what. They hear gunshots all the time. It's the impact that gets them, you know, if it's close.
And doesn't the sound come a little later?
Yeah. And in case of 1786, a lot later.
Doesn't the bullet get there before the sound does?
Yeah.
Or, I don't, yeah. It seems like it's something like that. Maybe I'm not a rifle guy, but regardless, it's so far away, it's not a...
it's a moot point.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different. But as far as archery goes, I completely understand and agree with the people that say it's bad to get the perceived idea that long distance shooting's okay because of technology, meaning the hard work is out the window. We have 7-pin sights and movers and rests and all this crazy stuff with a compound bow, that people shouldn't get the idea that will carry you and allow you to shoot long distance, because most of the time it does end up in a big miss, and a lot of people shouldn't be shooting long distance. I think the basic thing is knowing animal behavior is very important, and then obviously making sure the ability to, let's say it again, hold your mud equals the ability of your shooting distance, or your effective shooting distance. So if some of the best guys I know a few guys that are really good at shooting long distance and really suck when an animal's in front of them
because they get so nervous.
Right. So it all has to coincide with each other. But without getting myself into trouble,
it's too late, dude.
Yeah. If you stuck 10 guys side by side, and or let's say 12, and you've got 3 traditional shooters, highly experienced. The Clums around here really good. They own Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear. Tom Senior is an unbelievable coach, great shot. You've got 3 of their best shooters, right, side by side. They've all killed massive elk, huge elk, and great hunters. And then you've got 3 guys just getting into traditional hunting. Okay. And then you've got 3 guys that have hunted with a compound a little bit, but they're the guys that get the bow out at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of season, right? The week before.
Right.
3 different broadheads, no idea what they're doing. And then you've got 3 guys that I would say like me and Corey Miller and Tim Gillingham. No bows, no tune, no archery, no they know, not everything, but they know their bow. Okay, so let's say me and Corey and Tim, we put ours at 80 yards, right? Our distance, which is too far. Let's say in the ethical argument, 80 is too far. But then you've got the next 3 that put their bows together the week before season.
Yep.
And just off sheer numbers, they're 40, right? Anybody asks them, they're 40. And then you go to the 3 guys just getting into traditional. Let's say they're 30. And then you go to the 3 the clums, which I've seen Tom Sr. wad arrows at 60 yards with a recurve like a compound. And let's say, but they say theirs is 45. I'm going to pick the extreme distance traditional guys and the extreme distance compound guys by far to kill stuff and not wound animals than the guys just getting into traditional and the guys that put their bows together. But just off of sheer numbers, if you just pay attention to sheer numbers, 40 sounds a hell of a lot. 40 and 35 sounds a hell of a lot better than 80 and 45 to 50, let's say, because it's a numbers thing. And that's what I don't understand. People can't get their head around. It shouldn't be off of a number. It should be off of ability, knowing animal behavior, your shooting ability, and obviously your distance, your ability not to crap your pants when an animal's in front of you.
Right.
And so the number for me goes out the window.
So sort of the formula for what's ethical and what isn't is, X times Y times Z. If X is, your ability to hold your mud, Y is your skill as an archer, period, and Z is your knowledge about hunting and animal behavior. That whole package, let's say, together is really kind of what comes down to whether it's ethical or not ethical. It's not just anything over 50 is unethical. Because there's just too many other variables that go into what is ethical and what isn't in that regard. I agree with you. I've heard a lot of guys talk about how a lot can happen between the shot going off and its impact at long distance, and they're not willing to risk injuring the animal at that range. And yet I've seen close range shots go south, badly south. Like you said, that one that you shot at, that elk that ducked the arrow. I have on video. I'm sorry. I have on video this blacktail buck comes walking in, a nice little forked horn buck, and I was filming my dad. We're up in a tree. This buck comes walking down the trail, and he's 25 yards. And my dad takes a shot at this buck, and he's broadside at 25 yards. He takes a shot at this buck, and it's really cool. It's on slow motion. This arrow is going right to his heart, and even maybe a little low. But this buck instantly drops to the ground and turns sideways, and literally his shoulder, in slow motion, his shoulder is about 4 or 5 inches from the ground. He drops and lays down sideways, and his hooves, hit the ground, and he springs.
Which the human eye has hard time catching, but in slow-mo, you're like, holy
yeah.
crap.
When I replay that in slow motion, and I just can't believe how far that animal drops. And maybe I think I'll stick it into this podcast so people can see at 25 yards how much, if I can find the video, it's old, how much that animal can maneuver,
Right. Well, go ahead.
it was just insane, and that was really close. That buck stops, like he takes like 3 bounces and stops, and he just is looking around like, what the heck was that? That's just insane. What was that? So then he turns, and now he's like at 30 yards, and my dad loads another arrow, draws, and the buck's looking around, shoots it, and drills it. Well, that time he didn't duck.
Yeah.
Same bow, same setup, same everything, same something, just the sound, the way it went. I mean, instant reflexes. Second time at 30 yards, just stood there, took the arrow, like didn't jump. What the heck, dude?
I hunted a lot of whitetails at one point in time in my life with some old school, long time whitetail hunters, public land guys. This was in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And the one thing I learned at that time, speed was a big thing for me. That was in the days where
you're shooting feathers.
Speed was getting going. Yeah, no, speed. I had no feathers for me. That slows down the bow.
No, I meant featherweight arrows.
Oh,
like
Lordy. I was shooting
little arrows that weighed
like
nothing.
a Beeman Tree Bark 400 or something. And what was I shooting? Ultimate Steels, little 7/8 cut diameter broadhead.
It's like hitting them with a pebble.
Oh, yeah. But my idea was I'm getting there quick, right? Like, and it didn't matter. I mean, I'm sure it had to have helped. But whitetails, I mean, they're just take a step. They're looking up in the trees like, I know one of you peckerwoods is here somewhere.
And like blacktail, they haven't quite figured out, you know, there's not a lot of tree stand hunters. I think it's more common than it used to be. But they don't look up. You could dance a jig up in those trees and they don't look up. And I watch these whitetail films, and these whitetails are like, they're looking up constantly.
They're like, I'm like, how that now does are stupider. And at that time you could buy 2 doe tags a day.
Yeah.
Up in this was way up north. But anyway, I like from elk hunting, and then we talked about all the things you've learned is where we're at now, what we've decided. And at that time, elk hunting and stuff, I had smoked a bunch of elk and bears and blacktails, and I hadn't had one go very far, nor had I had one arrow stop, shooting fast arrows, right?
You're right.
Well, and we're sitting downstairs in my buddy Jerry's house, right? And this is up north, like way up, super cold Wisconsin. And John's over there. These are guys like, if they called me tomorrow, I would drive to Wisconsin to help them. These lifelong friends. And me being arrogant, I'm like, and I'd already smoked a couple bucks up there that year, right? I'd already, I was doing damage. I'm talking like, at this time I was working, I had my own glass company. So I was just making bank, dumb kid, just buying doe tags like crazy. I think I shot 30 of them or something, right? And they said, your bow sounds like a freaking 357 Magnum. Because we would sit in these tree stands, and one guy'd be over here and I'd be here. And I thought it'd be funny. I shot a doe out from under Jerry's stand. We were close enough, like 78 yards. And I hit it, but Jerry immediately, when we got out of the stand later, he's like, dude, what the hell's wrong with your bow? I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean? And I was shooting a Matthews LX, if you can remember that.
Yeah.
And I took plastic. I don't suggest this for you viewers at home, but you can shim out the limb pocket and it changes the deflection of the riser. So you take these plastic shims from like a fishing tackle box, take your bow apart, you glue those on like your rockers, gives you more poundage.
Wow.
Also gives you a really loud bow. So I was shooting 76 pounds with like a 300 and
you're practically dry firing this bow every time you shoot it.
And Jerry, he always wears his hat like this, and he's blind. He wears glasses, right? And he's kind of got a nervous tick, right? And you could see him in a tree stand like this. And so he's talking to me, and he's like, "What's wrong with your bow?" And I'm like, "What do you mean what's wrong with my bow? This thing's a killer." He's like, "Not on whitetails. Eventually, you're going to whack one in the spine or the shoulder. It's going to spin out of it." And I'm like, no, no way.
I shoot laser beams.
I'm 26-year-old and I know everything, and that's not going to happen. Man, sure as crap, that night they dropped me off. And no, I'd only shot, or was this the next year? It doesn't matter. A deer comes in a buck and like a 140 5x5, 4x4 with eye guards, whatever. And it's cold, man. I'm talking fart in the tree stand. You can hear it hit the ground cold, like -10. And I've got so much clothes on, and I'm shooting too many pounds for that specific setup. So the deer comes through and he stops perfectly. There's a tree like this, and he stops. His head's out here and his butt's out here, and I've got the V. And I'm like,
right at his heart.
I can sneak through there. And I shoot and hit it right in the shoulder. I mean, straight where you don't want to. And I'm like, because it lunged back. And my arrow, my ultimate killing, super fast arrow that nothing can stop, according to people on the internet, went ka-boom, and just stopped. And I didn't even hit the knuckle bone, right? I didn't.
Yeah.
Not to get into an arrow weight debate, for God's sake, but it just, I'm like, and there goes I'm like, mother, son of a. So I thought I had gotten one lung, and I did. So and this is the craziest thing in the world. It's cold. I'm in a lone wolf climber. I get down, which we're seeing a squirrel here, but I'm headlamps on now. I'm just running down after this thing. Its legs are kind of, dude, the thing bedded in the trail and I ran into it. I about shit my pants. It took off. I was like, whoa. I put another arrow into it. But the moral of that story is I didn't know animal behavior enough.
Yeah.
I should have known better to wait, right? If that animal would have come out, but I, young, inexperienced, hurried the shot. I wanted to get another buck. I mean, everything that, I mean, not saying that I know any better now, but I would have just waited, right? And for it to come out, and I would have known exactly where I was aiming, because what had happened is where I thought I was aiming and where I was actually aiming, or it lunged back.
Yeah.
I mean, I hit it in the shoulder, right? So, anyway, I think I owe Katie $10 too, because I said a bad word. I said a dirty word. And
so, okay, keep going.
Well,
because I have another question.
There's two schools of thought there.
Yeah.
One, I should have waited, but two, a quiet bow, which I'm a big fan now of. Like next year, I think I'm going to shoot a 600 grain arrow at 250, 60 feet per second. Because, dude, if the animals don't know you've shot and you have a rangefinder, you're good, right, for longer distances. And I can judge well enough at 20, 30, and 40. I'm within a couple yards, and very rarely have I not pre-range. So I really like a quiet bow.
I think quiet bow is really underrated right now, and speed is always overrated. And second, I think when you're taking those shots, there's a big difference between, let's say I'm up in my tree stand, I'm hunting blacktails, okay? There are times when the forest is dead silent. Like you can hear a pin drop. There's no noise at all. Like not even a rustle, a leaf, nothing. But there are other times where there's a slight breeze, the trees are moving. It's like being in a bunch of aspens, you know, like there's just noise. There's squirrels chirping, you know, there's chipmunks running around, and there's just birds making, it's just a noisy forest, right?
Yep.
There's a big difference between when it's dead silent like that and the amount of noise I get away with is completely different than when the forest is alive, you know, or the woods are alive. You're up there hunting elk in the alpine area, and there's a breeze on the mountain, and you know, light breeze, and there's just sounds. You get away with stuff.
Yeah.
But when it's dead silent, and sometimes we find ourselves in that position, and your bow is also loud on top of that, there's just no way that animal's not going to flinch.
Well, this year, not that I want to admit this, as you know, I was on a quest to shoot a massive deer.
Yeah.
And I missed a couple along the way. Now, barring the fact I went into anaphylactic shock, passing up a lot of deer. I got two shots in one sitting at a deer, and it was 100% because my bow was quiet.
Yeah.
I was shooting that Bowtech Prodigy at a 560 grain arrow, 550. It was heavy. I can't remember exactly. I can go weigh my arrow, but I shot, and it was far enough away. It was last light. My arrow landed. There was something on my pin which made me whatever. I was thinking it was my fiber, but that arrow hit the ground and it was quiet. It was pretty silent. But that arrow or that deer, he just jumped a couple times because he probably thought it was a rock that fell or something. He didn't hear my bow go off. And like a chuckle puppet, I missed it again just to make sure I could do it. Same arrow hitting the same spot, and then I knew something was wrong. At the time, I thought I might have moved something. Something might have moved on my bow because the arrow both times, hit like, if this is its foot and this is mid body, it hit right in front of mid body, perfect height.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, what happened? But anyway, it didn't hear my bow go off, and so I shot that Boss the other day, which I like a little better, with a 624 grain arrow.
Woo.
And it wasn't very fast, but dude, you cannot hear that bow go off. I mean, it is deadly silent. Now, that is completely different since we were talking about rifle long distance stuff too. Now, keep in mind, my long distance rifle shooting is very limited personally. And I'll tell the story of me screwing up, which is a good example of technology only takes you so far. Common sense has to carry and skills the rest of the way. But hanging out with all those guys on the long distance shooting and seeing what they're capable of. One, they're like lasers, right? They're machines. These guys, they're very methodical. They know how to read the wind. They know they're dope. They practice all the time. There's no variables, right? There's no I don't know. Like right. They know how to read everything. The only variable is the wind. And these guys all, they're not going and buying, a Remington 700 at Walmart and whichever one's the crappy one, the BDL or ADL. But these are all custom guns, right? They have generally the Night Force or the Vortex Razor Gen 2s, Vortex PSTs. Some of the guys have gotten the new Swarovskis, but all ballistic turrets.
Right.
And how that works for, if you don't know, this is a very, very idiot-proof way to explain it. Once you know your dope and you enter it into your...
What's your dope? What's a dope?
For lack of a better explanation, I'll just say what your bullet drop is. Your bullet drops exponentially as it goes out. What your drop is at what distance. Mm-hmm. So once you have a precise reading and you know how much your bullet drop is,
yep.
Then you know how many times to click your turret to compensate for that.
Yep.
And then you have the wind, which is a guess. And then you can either aim off or dial it in.
Yep.
Either one.
Yep.
Well, from my limited experience of watching, wind is the key. Generally, are you very rarely off of height. And I've seen some misses with long distance shooting. Generally, it's wind. Now, you would think as a rookie watching this and not paying attention, you could just buy your way into long distance shooting. You go buy a Night Force. You go buy a high dollar gun.
Yep.
You can figure out your dope by what it says on the box, really. I mean, it doesn't take too much, but you're not hand loading, you're not reloading, and you don't know what to do when. You're not as calm about it. So I'll give you an example of me missing a giant mule deer, which I'm going to get some criticism for this, but we're on the moose hunt, and a moose comes out at 1,200 yards, which is well within Ryan's killing range.
Mm-hmm.
Sam's with us, and he's another machine. Well, the moose, they're waiting for it to turn broadside, and they're shooting a 338 edge plus P. I think it weighs 300 grain. I think it's like 3,100 feet per second or something. Ridiculous speed.
Yeah.
And Sam's wanting it to turn, and in my mind, I'm thinking, it doesn't need to turn that much. That's a 300 grain bullet. Just hit it, right? Just get one in there close to the lung. Something's going to happen. We'll get another one in it because it was in a giant clear cut, which is very bad whatever. I'm going to hell, right? That's a bad way to look at it. But I've been hunting with Ryan for 20 days, so I'm like, yeah, let it corner, 6 more inches for it to turn, not that big of a deal. Well, the fog came in, we didn't get a shot. So the next morning, I've got a deer tag, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to hike way up to that one area I saw all those does. Can I take the Canyon rifle, which it's a defensive edge, it's a Carlock gun. And they're like, yeah, go ahead, take the Canyon rifle. So as I'm going out to tent, and they got a bit of a head cold. They're like, don't forget to zero out the elevation and windage. Because I screwed that up on a bear, which is another story. Fully admitting I am not a long-distance shooter. In fact, that Peckerwood Sam calls me the long-range miss machine. So I get, and I know animals, right? All these does come out. It's a snowstorm, right? Freezing cold. I've got so much clothing on, it's not even funny. I got the gun set up. I've got the G7 rangefinder. It tells me how far to dial it. Like I know with all this technology around me, I'm going to kill something.
Yes.
So the does come out, and then there's a forked horn behind them. And I'm like, 13 does and 1 forked horn? I don't think so. There's a buck.
Yep.
And then I look 250 yards in front of those deer is the buck. And he's a toad, right? And I'm like, oh, money, right? Grab the rangefinder, click. Okay, hold on. I get my tripod out, rest it, click. I've got the yardage. Yep. And it tells me how many minutes to dial, right?
Right.
It's idiot proof. So I dial it in, and I'm like, oh, yeah, the windage, because there's a 0 stop on most scopes. So I cranked until it stopped, and then click, and I clicked all the times the G7 rangefinder told me to. It's genius. This deer is going to die. Then
the rangefinder told you to do this, and you just clicked it in. Now it's just a matter of pulling the trigger.
And hold on. We got to do the windage. Okay. So you've got your ballistic turret over here, right? And me being so excited, they said to zero out the elevation and the windage. So I start cranking on that one like it's money, thinking once it stops, I'll zero it. A few twists into that, I realize that makes absolutely no sense, because then I can't go left and right. There's not going to be, if I go all the way till it stops, I'm only going to go one way or the other. Wait a minute. Oh, crap.
Zero somewhere in the middle.
Where did I dial that to? So, okay. And the deer's still there. It's not going anywhere. I'm like, okay, how many cranks did I put on that? And I'm looking, and it doesn't have a mark anywhere. And even if it did, I wouldn't know if it was 2 cranks back. So I call, right? Nobody answers. I text. And I'm like, what the hell is the 0 for windage? And I get, the 0's the 0. WTF are you talking about? And I'm like, no, where was the 0?
Is that Avery, or is that like...
That's Sam.
Sam, okay.
So I'm like, all right, Sam, you're an a-hole. I'm calling Ryan. I'm like, Ryan, dude, I got this buck. And I explained the whole situation. And he's like, oh, yeah, that doesn't fix itself. We're going to have to re-zero, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, I can figure this out. I'm pretty sure this is how many times I twisted it. So I go back, and I'm like, I think that's where it was. And I'm like, and at this distance, it's going to be a miss or a hit, right? And the ethics police will give me crap about this. So I've got everything set up. I got the sandbag, and I know how to shoot a gun. Like, anytime they dial it in for me, dude, I'm money out to 2,000 yards. I don't miss very often. I mean, the first time I shot was at like 1,400 with Ryan, and I had a 3-shot group like this. I lay down there, and I'm like, nothing happens, right? They're all feeding. Like, okay, maybe it was a little more. And I'm looking for a mark, and I load another one in. And this gun's like 52 inches longer, so 40. It's long. And it's perfect, picturesque. Fog's rolling in. And I'm like, man, I'm going to be the hero of the day here. I'm going to crank. I mean, this is like a typical North Idaho, gnarly, non-typical mainframe 4 with kickers. And I'm like, nothing. They kept feeding. So then all the does come around the buck, and I'm like, okay, I have some ethics here. I better stop. I'm going to shoot a doe, right? So I stop. I take my toys and I go home, right? I go back to camp. At the distance I was shooting, I was 98 inches off of one direction. That's how far it was by the time it got there. So this is not the end of my long-range miss machine stories. And I'm saying this so people don't get the bright idea it's just that easy. I had been shooting, if I remember right, a ballistic turret that was per one full revolution, 10 MOA. So 10 minutes of angle. And I was dialed in with that one. And then we backpacked into this area, and I don't mind staying in the woods. I don't go home. We go in with a couple guns. Ryan leaves me a gun, and he's like, okay. And Ryan's a super good teacher. And Ryan's like my brother, greatest guy in the world. And he's like, okay, all you have to do, because this is all relatively level. And he's like, there's the wind you can see, the wind you can hear, and the wind you can't see, meaning helping me out figure out the wind to aim off. And he said, don't dial the turret. It's zeroed for windage. Just aim off a little bit and go with your gut. If you feel the wind's coming at this, and he knows I can read wind. And we got some ribbons out there. So the bear comes out, it's a toad. And I'm like, okay, I'll kill it. This is perfect, right? So it was over one full crank for the distance, which I won't discuss the distance. Yeah. So I go one full crank, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, one full crank around. And I'm like, okay, that's 10 MOA, 1 MOA, 2 MOA. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yep.
I hit like 4 feet over its back. And bears don't stick around. It runs off. What the heck? I zero it back out. Bear comes out a couple hours later. I do the same thing again, about 4 feet over its back. And I'm like, perfect windage. Well, to make a very short story, which I'm making it long, the gun he left me was 12 minutes MOA for full crank. So I was 2+ minutes off, which it's 2 minutes is 10 inches at 1,000 yards or whatever. So I was 20 inches off or whatever the hell. I shot way over its back. So I'm like, okay, I'm not a good long range shooter. This sucks, right? So the moral of that whole entire story was technology doesn't mean anything if you don't have your head out of your butt. And I was a prime example. I just figured I'd click the rangefinder, dial some stuff in, and no, it didn't work out like that. So I would grab my bow and I shot a big bear the next year.
Well, even then, you have, like you said, knowing your equipment is really critical. But so is skill. So, like your ability to shoot a firearm. So you have your ability to shoot a firearm, right? Like they dial it in, you put the crosshairs on, you can pull this trigger.
Oh, that's up here. My knowledge, it's
totally. So that's what I was going to say is, knowing your equipment is as important as your skill,
right? And
technology can't make up for not knowing your equipment,
right? And I think that once your knowledge is like with archery with me, my knowledge is pretty high with tuning and everything else. With them, with guns, their knowledge on how to do all of that, as well as their knowledge of reading the animal and their ability to actually, pull a trigger, is all extremely high. And you need that total package for long distance shooting, as well as archery.
Yeah. So don't you think, though, that coming from an archery background, it's really easy or just having shot archery so much or hunted archery so much, don't you think it's pretty easy to assume that now that you have a rifle, it's a cakewalk?
Oh, it was. Yeah. Now, I will say,
because I know as a primarily an archery hunter, that there are times, and not so much anymore, where I used to just overestimate how easy it was going to be to hunt with a rifle.
Yeah.
And turned out to be and in some ways that's true, but it's not as easy as or simple as I had played it out to be in my head.
The one thing I have learned with that is with super ultra long range is different than being able to shoot 400 yards, because you're in a whole different category with extreme long range shooting. And most extreme long range shooters that I know, and I don't know all of them, that's all they set up for is long range. And when I say long, meaning long range, 800 out. Mm-hmm. In the case with me, if I'm helping, I love that, because that means I can build a bonfire and stay warm, because animals don't care.
Right.
And it's not something I would probably ever get into a whole lot, not the ultra long range.
Yeah.
Now it's fun to shoot the gun far away.
Yeah.
But, it's not exactly, there's so much other involved in it than what's perceived as hunting to the community right now. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
The long range thing, it's hunting, but it's a different skill. One, you need to know where animals are going to come and feed, where they're going to be available for those longer shots.
Yeah.
You need to know, obviously. Well, there's more you need to know than that. But
it's basically sniper shooting, which in its own way is super challenging, and
well, and people give Ryan crap, right, Avery, about long distance shooting. He got death threats and all kinds of crap. He just shot his elk at 1,400 yards. Now, I can tell you right now, Ryan has probably 30 elk in his garage that he killed with a stick bow. So guys that are sending these death threats, it's not like Ryan didn't serve his time shooting crap at 25 yards with a stick bow, right? He's got a whole garage full of elk, from spikes all the way up to a 336 by 6 that he shot with a recurve.
Yeah.
So it's not, you can't say all of a sudden Ryan's a crappy hunter because he's shooting long distance. He has more elk than most men with a recurve.
It's a different skill, different challenge. It's continually growing. It's an interest. I agree. Like, you'll hear some guys, archery hunters, say, I just don't know what the point is of shooting long distance. Hunting to me is about getting close. And if you're gonna shoot archery, it's about getting 20 yards close, 30 yards, and anything more than that, it's not worth it. And so you get that kind of mentality. And I don't. If that's how that guy feels about it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I just don't think you should project your idea on what hunting is to you on someone else. If it's ethical, if it's legal, if you're highly skilled, I think you do it. I don't know if we can be friends anymore, Aaron, because you shot a deer in its bed, and that's just not ethical. You just can't be shooting deer in the bed. I mean, I glossed over that at the beginning when I heard it, but it's been bothering me ever since.
Well, we talked about this at the hunting partner thing, right? The issues. Well,
because
Justin,
I say that facetiously because on like network TV you can't show a deer shot in its bed.
Yeah,
I heard him talking about that. I think on one of those podcasts, like with Ranella the other day. The whole ethics behind it's perceived as unethical to shoot a deer in its bed, which seems to me absolutely ridiculous if you're sneaking up on it to 20 yards and shooting it. It's like that shows skill, not it's not unethical. It's just bizarre to me what people decide is ethical and not ethical.
Well, a good friend of mine, Justin Davis, I mentioned him a couple minutes ago. He's killed a ton of elk and deer. He's a very good hunter, and he's got to be half ninja because that kid is sneaky. But he's posted. I mean, people have called me and be like, "Dude, does that dude not like you?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And I think it's obviously how things are perceived. But people know with me, if you do something stupid, I'm going to say you did something stupid. Or if you took a long shot and I know you're capable, I'm like, dude, that's solid work, right? I'm more about I don't have any set parameters on, it's for per each person. But Justin has posted, blatantly after I've posted or someone else has, it's about getting close. I don't understand why you take long shots or something like that, when it's not like Justin and I don't go hang out, and it's not like we're not friends. He just gets close, and me, I don't care. It's not that I don't care, but I can tell you, if we're on a backpacking hunt or whatever the case may be, when I leave, my thought in my mind isn't, I can't wait to shoot this animal at 8 yards. And it's also, I can't wait to shoot this animal at 80 yards. It's, I'm going to get as close to this animal as I can. And if I perceive it within my ability, I'm going to shoot at it. Meaning, if it knows I'm there, I may not shoot when it's at 40. If I can let it calm back down or whatever. And if it doesn't know I'm there, I may take it at 80. It does. I have no idea what it'll be until I'm right there. Where with Justin, he's definitely about getting really close. And that's what it is for him. But that's Justin, and I'm me, and we're different people. And I think pushing that is like pushing religion on someone. Pushing religion on people generally doesn't work very well. Yeah. It's definitely not going to help you join the cause, right?
Right.
So if and that's part of the big problem. You get on internet forums, and it's like there's no hearing each other out, right? There's no, hey, let's talk about this. Hey, let kumbaya and let's all get along, right? Like, hey, it's all about hunting. It's, you're a peckerwood because you shoot long distance and I shoot a recurve and I'm right and you suck. Well, and it shouldn't be that way.
I think there's a couple things at play though. There's some people who like taking the life of another animal. Mm-hmm. For some people, it doesn't disturb them that much, right? Mm-hmm. It's not. Maybe they've been doing it a long time. They've grown a little callous to it, or they're not as sensitive to it. I think that can happen a lot where, that's just the natural world. That's the way the world turns. I'm killing you and I'm eating you. And they come a little more detached with that. And then there are others who are really sensitive to the fact that they just killed an animal, right? It's close to the surface. It feels like, it's something that's harder for them to do. And so I think you have often, it comes from a place of honesty where the person is like, just feels a lot of compassion for the animals that they're hunting. And out of that deep respect they have for the animal, they don't want to take that chance on injuring it or causing undue pain to this animal, right? But I think there's the other guy out there, the ethics police guy, which I think is all too often the more common, who is more or less a pretender, who sort of pretends like he cares a lot about the animal, that ethical shot distance matters a lot to him because it's a way for him to basically show how much compassion he has. And and the reality is they're often the guy out there flinging an 800 or 80-yard, arrow when they're not equipped to do it. Yeah. Because they don't really believe what they say. On the internet, everybody can be a keyboard warrior, and it's easy to get on there and say, that was so wrong, I would never do that, I am a better human being than you are. And that really that doesn't come from a place of it's not authentic, it's not genuine, it's not honest. And so it's just a way to, just to tell the world how much better they are than you are. And unfortunately, that doesn't really get us anywhere in terms of this discussion. And
that's the part that drives me crazy too. Is
there's just so much of that, because I have friends and people acquaintances I know who have done that, and then I find out later that they're shooting 95-yard shots with their bows, and it's like it's sort of like a guy will say, dude, I would never, there's no way I would partner with that company. Right. Yeah. Well, then that company offers them $2 million. It's like, well, for that price, I'll partner with them. Right. It's like everybody can be bought. Yeah. It's sort of like that with hunting. I've observed where there's 120-inch mule deer, and I'm never taking an 80-yard shot. Just not going to do it. There's a 210-inch mule deer standing there on the hill.
Yeah.
And you can't get any closer, and it's about to go over and disappear. All of a sudden, the 80-yard shot is viable. It's like he just got bought by the size of the buck, you know. And I think people often they compromise they weigh they weigh it out, and they decide, well, at this point, I'm willing to break my rules because the reward could be so huge.
Well, and I've seen some pretty significant battles go on about long distance shooting on expensive hunts, right? Like you go on a sheep hunt,
Yeah.
and you take your sheep at 76 yards, 84 yards, whatever the case may be, something deemed by most of the world is too far. And I see the guy completely, he's like, look, I didn't want to go home empty handed.
Yeah.
I paid $20,000 for that hunt. Yeah, I took the shot. And then the ethics police get on there and they say, well, as a responsible bow hunter, you should not have taken the shot. You should have went home without filling your tag. That's very easy to say, but it's not very easy to do. And in my caribou, we will not talk about the total distance of that shot, but it was far. And I 100% had 3 hours to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I could hit it, and I shot it, and I killed it. It was far.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never be able to afford, I doubt I'll be able to afford to go on a caribou hunt again. I only had 3 hours in the entire season really to hunt. We ran up there, and I shot it. Now, most people would probably say it was too far, and some would say that I should have just went home with an empty tag. And I'm not going to do that. I killed it. It's dead. It's on my, well, it's not on my wall because I don't mount anything, but it has the ability to be on my wall.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it was a personal choice that I made, and I have to go to sleep at night. Leave me alone about it. Like, don't. Now, if I have wounded 65 animals, that's one thing. But I know guys that shoot close up that have wounded a ton of animals too. So it's very arguable as far as that goes.
Right.
But for the guy that, generally the guys you talk about, it's just something they choose not to do because it's in their soul not to wound an animal, and they're not going to take that chance. My buddy Larry Welchin is like that. He's a guy that, I think he was 70, 71 when we went on a goat hunt, and he killed one. He might make some kind of smart aleck comment towards me every now and then, but he just generally, he doesn't, his skill level is not good. And he won't take a far shot.
Yeah.
Now I've shot 3D courses with him, and he couldn't hit a bull in that butt with a bass fiddle, right? He's not a great shot, but he knows that, and he hunts accordingly.
Yeah. Well, I think that when it comes down to whether you take that shot or don't take that shot, like you said, it's a combination of all your collective experiences, which tell you whether you can do it or whether you can't. And it's interesting you bring up that point about only being there 3 hours, only having so much time. You got a shot opportunity, and you took it. Because I think that one thing that I look at is pushing the limits of your ability, both in stalking ability and shooting ability, is all part of the challenge of hunting. Pushing yourself to that edge. And some of the best hunters I know that kill game every year, it comes down to doing something that's tough, really tough to do. They take chances, flat out, period. They gamble. And the best hunters I know gamble. They don't wait for the shot that they're 100% they can make every single time. A lot of them, they got a weird angle. They're creeping over a rock. They got a branch in the way. They're doing the best they can given their circumstances, but they're aggressive and they're going after it. And so I think, for me, I got to balance it all, and I got to go, okay, I think I can do, because I want to come home with meat in the freezer.
Yeah.
I want to come home successful. And so I will probably take more chances at animals that some other guys that are more conservative wouldn't. But I feel like I'm not disrespecting the animal. I feel like this is all part of for me, it's all part of the package of hunting. I think mankind has been taking risks in the hunting game for years, taking shots, throwing spears, doing the best they can with what they've got within the limits of their ability. But they don't. What I mean is, there's no guarantees. And if you're waiting for guarantees, you're never going to kill anything. You gotta take chances, and then you gotta, like you said, like we've been saying, you gotta balance that with what's right for you.
And the whole, respecting the animal, right? Which gets talked about. You see photos on Facebook. Some guys are kneeling down in front of it and praying, and other guys are laughing. And should you laugh or shouldn't you laugh or
celebrate or not? Or you'll hear a guy say, "Dude, that was a toad. Way to whack it." And then you'll have a guy that's like, "That's not respectful to say it like that. You should say, what a magnificent creature, and I'm so grateful to take it." Right? You have those just different attitudes and feelings, and it gets people really charged up.
Right. And one, we should probably all try and get along for the love of Pete, right? Like, two, respecting something you killed is a little bit odd for me, as far as like
a little hypocritical. Is that what you?
Well, you just put a broadhead through its freaking heart, right? I guess there's a manner there. I understand that obviously you don't, however your moral compass points, right? If you're that worried about respecting the animal, you probably maybe shouldn't shoot it. That would be probably the most respectful thing is let it live and eat and go breed, right? But
I don't necessarily agree though, Aaron. What do you mean like by respect the animal? Because that can be a really broad term.
Yeah, and that probably did sound bad. As far as showing respect to the animal, to me, is training, practicing shooting, all right, knowing your equipment, right, putting the effort into it to give your due diligence, your best step forward, your best effort.
Yeah.
To kill that animal ethically. That's respect.
That's respect. Yeah.
Whether I took a frontal shot or an 80-yard shot, I did the best I could for all the time I had. I pushed as hard as I could every day to kill that animal. That's respect to me. Now, if I want to laugh and high five after it dies, that's a moot point. I did what I feel is right to train. Now, some freaking fat guy that never trains, never shoots his bow, never practices, and he goes out and he's going to give me crap because Colton and I high-fived and we're like, whoo, I can't believe that. But I'm wrong to him where I'm like, all right, dude, well, you know what? In my own personal view, and everyone's are different, and I don't have any problem with his views, just don't push him on me. In my point, I trained, I did everything, I shot, I tuned my broadheads, I put my best foot forward. That is respecting the animal to me.
So when you're celebrating this whole thing, what are you celebrating?
So because I don't get overly excited, right? Like Colton thought I was mad when he shot his. I just don't get, like I shot my bull this year. I'm excited on the inside, but I was like, wow, dude, did you see that? And he was like, yeah. I'm like, man, that was crazy. Let's go shoot another one. Grab your bow. And so, but I just show it differently. But with Colton, we slid down a shale field. No one died. We'd been going after it as hard as we could, 11 plus whatever miles we were in.
He's been dreaming about a big bull for years.
His entire life. He talked about it all year. And we're talking, I don't know anyone trained harder than my group did, right? When I say my group, meaning the guys I train with. We're talking thousands of hours on the side of Red Rocks, Green Mountain, Tower Trail, shooting broadheads over and over and over. I mean, it all comes down when that animal hits the ground, you've succeeded, right? All of that hard work, that was your pinnacle. That's the end of it. That's what you were going for. Yeah, a guy's probably going to be excited about that. Like, how can you not? If you win the Super Bowl and you, some guys are going to pray, all right, and drop to their knee and hug their family. Other guys are going to get pissed drunk.
Right.
Either one of them's wrong. It's how you do it individually. And I think pushing your values and views of what should be done is BS, minus the guy doing something just straight stupid.
Well, I think often when people see that celebration, they misread it. Right? There's this this aversion to violence, this attitude toward respecting the animal. I think that people see that and they're like, "You're super happy you killed it." That there's blood on the ground. And I go back to that's not what you're celebrating. What you're celebrating is all that work, running up the mountain, doing all that sacrifice, is learning the skill, getting proficient with your weapon, enduring, suffering, all that stuff in the cold, all of that. That's what you're celebrating. This is the success that ended up. It's not that you're glorifying, death.
Yeah.
That you killed it. In fact, I think most of us, feel a level of compassion for the fact that we killed it, right? It's like, hey, I hate to do that, but guess what? I eat meat. I need meat to survive. This is healthy. This is life. This is how it goes. Life eats life. It's just part of how it goes. I feel bad that it has to happen this way because there is a part of me that has some compassion for that animal. At the same time, I'm joyful that I succeeded. You can have all that emotion together, but to judge someone on the outside, to judge someone for what you see on the outside in terms of a celebration or happiness, you can attribute that celebration to the wrong things. It's not like you're some sick, bloodthirsty murderer. It's a different kind of celebration. And
I think it is very difficult for the human to get along with each other, right? It's just hatred for whatever reason, right? Like, I don't understand it myself just because I'm pretty open-minded on a lot of stuff as far as like, if a guy wants to go pray or a guy wants to do, whatever, right? I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Don't shoot jet in the headlights out of state in somebody's yard. After that, as long as you're doing what's legally required, I don't get too riled up.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't mount my animals. I don't. A lot of them, my elk this year is hanging in a tree along with several of my mule deer. But I take all the meat. I have been told via hater emails that are anonymous and that I'm stupid for doing that. I'm weird, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of, and I can understand that the ideology or the thought process behind this.
Right.
But for me, it's the brotherhood. It's about the men beside me. It's about all it took to get there and about the meat because I live off the meat. Like that's all I eat. The rack portion of it is a moot point for me. I mean, obviously, it's more of a challenge to shoot a bigger animal. And I don't have any issues with trophy. I mean, trophy hunting is great, too. I don't have a problem with that. But my point being is, for me, I get criticized because I'm leaving the rack out there. When the last time I checked, you can't eat horns. I think, right? Like, so why leave me alone? I just want to eat it and have a good time, right? I just want to go out there and adventure.
I think what's funny is I'm probably more annoyed by people that shout or scream after they killed an elk or whatever in a way that, or they're just like, I wasted him, dude. He's, and there seems to be like a real callousness toward the animal, right? It kind of bugs me. It's like, I don't know why. I just feel like the animal deserves excitement, for what you accomplish, but they also deserve some level of respect. You probably, on the other hand, I think, are a little more annoyed by the guy that kneels down and prays and is like really solemn about it. And I feel so bad, and I wish I hadn't. I almost wish I hadn't done this, right? And
I would say mostly because most of them are lying.
That's what I was going to say. Is I think most of the time, and the reason that's annoying is because it's not genuine.
It's the industry today. You seem to need to
tell everybody how good you are, what a nice chap you are, how much you care about wildlife more than the next guy.
Yeah, and I just don't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with. I mean, you hunt for your own reasons, right? If you're a person of faith, whatever faith that may be, and it's a spiritual thing for you, by all means, that's your thing.
Yeah.
But the super hyped up photos of a guy praying or showing respect or whatever, I don't know, but I probably just wouldn't kill it. That might show it more respect, right? And maybe it's the time in the military. I don't know, but for me, respecting it is putting your. I mean, if I go into a fight, right, like fist fight, and I fight just a dink, right, just a layup. I would much rather get my butt kicked by a dude that put everything he had into it, because I'm walking away like, okay, he's just better than me today. I mean, he's better than I am, and there's nothing wrong with that. Where the layup would be kind of like a super NWT guided hunt that you pretty much you paid for everything.
Yeah.
You can show your respect for that animal all you want to, but I have a lot more respect for the guy that showed his respect for the animal by putting everything he had into it, whether it be, physically, mentally, financially. I mean, guys that have 3 kids, working, sole provider for a family of 4, and get out there to hunt 5 to 7 days out of the entire year. He's showing a lot of respect for the animal just to get out there.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Interesting. It's all, I think for me, what it boils down to is just authenticity. Be honest with yourself and with everybody around you. If you genuinely feel a certain way, it's okay to share that. What bothers me is so often when it's not genuine, it's not authentic. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Don't be the guy that pretends like he's tough when he's not. Don't be the guy that pretends like he's full of compassion when he's not. Don't pretend to be what you're not. Just be yourself. Be real.
Yeah, and as far as, just because this is dragging on, I mean, as far as long distance shooting, my own personal opinion, if I haven't figured it out by now, bow or gun, if your shooting distance far exceeds your ability, then don't shoot. If your killing distance, I guess you could say, is exceeding that, then don't do it. I mean, I would shoot what you're not in your own mind, what you're realistically capable of taking an animal at, and that. And obviously, if you screw that up, then it should probably be, reined in a little bit.
Yeah.
I just don't think a number should be a generic number can be thrown on the planet for ethical shot distance, because it's certainly not thrown in for the mile run, the bench press, you can name it. Some people are just flat out better than others. And some people, that's just how it is. We're all good at something.
Yep. All right, dude. Well, we finally got this one hammered out. We'll see.
I'm sure it'll stir up some crap.
See how it goes. I think it was a good talk. I think it was, we've done a couple of podcasts where it's been more philosophical than it has been, it's opinion based rather than informational in terms of what gear we use or techniques or tactics. And I think that it's good to have these discussions mixed in there. Gets people thinking.
Well, we'll find out in a week or two. I'm sure.
We will. All right, dude. Well, enjoy your day, and we'll catch you next week. Stay gritty, Aaron.
All right, sounds good.
All right. All right, friends. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Don't forget about our deal with Mountain Ops. Type in the word gritty at checkout and get 20% off until the end of the year. For those of you who have not seen the Full Draw Film Tour this year and want to go, check out their website for their tour schedule. And if you haven't done so, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to the Gritty Bowman TV podcast on iTunes or Podbean so you can see all the latest video content we have produced. And be sure to have a look at the new Elk 101 website where you can find our podcast and other great elk hunting content. Thank you for taking the time to leave us your feedback. We really appreciate your sincere support of our show. Finally, let me leave you with this quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who in 1905 said, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Friends, always take the time to educate those around you about your role as a hunter in preserving the wild creatures of this world. If you don't, who will? As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.